All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to February 2022's Fic Night for Fanfic Talk. I am your host, Mage Maddie. Today we have our lovely author as our guest, RogueSlytherin, also known as Jackie. And we are reading a one-shot from her series, or her collection of one-shots in the Amada's Most Discreet universe. So this is the second chapter of this story collection called The Blame Is on Me. If you would like to read along, the link to the story is in the description. But otherwise, I think we will just go ahead and dive right in. Lily is worried for me. She agrees that I shouldn't have turned Mina away, but also thinks I'm a fool for letting her in. She thinks my hormones are driving my choices more than my head or even my heart, and there's certainly truth to that. Still, I convince myself we can fall back into step. I tried to pretend that she never chose the darkness over me, but it's not like when we were all together in school. The teasing that existed between the singular snake amongst lions feels more like a brewing cauldron ready to spit us out with one wrong step. Sirius erupts hours after hearing what I've done. Demands she leave until I say I'd just go with her. Now he's hardly home and watching her with daggers in his eyes when he is. So I do what I can to keep the rest of them out of it. It's not just Padfoot. None of them trust her. I don't know if I trust her, but I know I can't let her go again. They don't understand what it's like to have this blackness gnawing at your soul, how it feels to keep a secret at the edge of your lips, never able to swallow it, but also unable to spit it out. So instead it just sits there on your tongue, souring. They're all so perfect. They carry themselves with such grace and keep our little world spinning in a steady rhythm, good and bad, right and wrong. Mina knocks it all off balance with a world of gray. She brings the comfort of chaos with her, and I find myself clinging to it. I won't be the one to send her back to the cages and orders and hollow words of affirmation. When I wrap my arms around her, she can feel safe and wanted and know that she's not alone. The longer she's at my side, the longer she can put off returning to the void they've convinced her is fate, the longer I can. Most mornings, she's sitting by the window, having it cracked just enough to let the winter air blow through the pages of the book she's always reading. It only took her a week to make it through most of the ones on Sirius's shelf and was quick to complain about his dry taste. I thought all you fancy people liked boring books about history and long, deep allegories, I tease, pulling the book from her. We're on the couch, her legs stretched out over my lap. I look at the hardback cover she'd been flipping through, unable to read the French that's scrawled out in gold filigree over the maroon cover. I prefer stories that have no point. She kicks her foot, knocking the book out of my hand, and hits the ground with a subtle thud. The ones that always end happy. A yawn follows and she stretches out her arms, fingers poking through the knit of a mustard jumper she'd gotten from my closet. It hangs off her shoulders, a far cry from the form-fitting fashion she usually wears. She curls up then, tucking herself deeper into the cushions and nodding off in moments. I tell her I have to visit my mom, a lie I've told often enough that she's no reason to doubt me. Instead, I report to the order. They want to speak to her. Want her to give up any knowledge she has on our enemy, but I refuse. When they ask why, I can't explain myself. I say it's because she's not ready, that she's still too weary to thrust back into all this. But really it's because when she does speak with me, she says all the right things, even when they're the wrong things to say. She doesn't sidestep the war, but she never addresses it directly either. She watches me when I answer her questions about James and Lily and what everyone gets up to these days, but isn't really listening. She thanks me for giving her a safe haven to escape to, tells me she doesn't know what she would have done if I turned her away. But there's a dimness in her eyes when she lies to me. Still, I lay beside her, listening to honey words laced with deception, all too eager to be lost in the smell of jasmine in her hair and taste of whiskey on her lips, adrift in the electricity of her skin against mine. Before I return home, I stop by a bookshop and scan the shelves for the Muggle stories my mother used to read to me. They wrap the titles with twine and tie it off so I can carry them easily on the trek back. I balance a cigarette between my lips for a moment on the steps to the front door, debating whether to light it or not. I'm flipping the lid of my lighter open and closed when I see she's not by the window, that it's not even cracked open. I push through the front door, but she's nowhere to be seen, though the record player is crooning. My pace quickens to the back room, and I'm finally able to take a breath at the sight of her. I put the lighter back in my pocket and pull the cigarette from my lips, letting it roll back and forth atop the books I've sat on the end table. I've warned you already. Sirius is well off, but he's not got anyone on staff. I let out an anxious sigh, sitting on the bed next to the pile of clothes she's created. Whatever mess you make, you'll have to clean up. My thoughts don't rattle her in the least, and she continues without looking in my direction. It's not the same sort of quiet she normally carries. There's a stillness in the air as I begin to pick through the jumpers she's collected, only now realizing that she had returned to the same black dress she had on when she stormed back into my life. Thank Lily for me, would you? Finally, her voice moves to space, but she still won't meet my eyes. Instead, she concentrates on folding the sweaters Lily had lent her, separating them from the one she pulled out of my own closet. A weight settles on my shoulders as I watch her, heat flushing over the back of my neck. Don't do this again. I grab for her wrist, but she pulls away as if my touch could scald her. Stop it, Remus, she snips, an uncharacteristic sense of anguish in her voice. She still won't look at me, so I crane my neck to see her eyes hiding beneath her dark fringe. Her cheeks are flushed and eyes are reddening from the tears she won't let herself cry. Was Sirius here? Did he? It's not to do with him. I have to bite my lip to keep from screaming out in frustration. Hearing the formal register of her voice sends me right back to the library she first abandoned me in. The way her shoulders tensed and she straightened her posture, taking on the formalities of the pureblood she was choosing to be. I can't keep pretending. Her finger is twisting a loose thread in the olive green knit at the top of the pile. No matter how you dress me up, I'm always going to be the fucking mess I've always been. Fine. I try to collect my thoughts. My mouth feels so dry that it's hard to even speak my next words. Be that mess here, would ya? Don't just... You can't fix me, Remus! It's so odd to hear her voice raised that I stand to my feet. Finally, she meets my gaze, but I don't even feel like it's Mina standing before me. Her eyes are just shells of what I know them to be. Empty voids looking through me rather than at me. The sun's falling past the building outside my window, and a bit of its warmth pours in through the blinds, but the room still feels cold. I reach out for her again, but again she pulls away. A thought flutters through my mind, thinking of the cage she wants so desperately to return to, wondering if it isn't better to force her hand as the order requested the day before, to call for Moody or the Pruitts, to sentence her to a cage I feel less wary of. I could call Dumbledore, even. Call for him, then. I hear her voice in my head like a familiar song, though her lips aren't moving to sing it. I feel it again as our eyes linger on one another, something nipping at the back of my mind like a dream fading as I try to recall its details, and gnawing at my memories that I can't pin down. The music in the other room gives way to white noise as the needle reaches the groove at its end and I put both hands behind my head, turning away from her, struggling to find a deep breath. The reason I didn't want her near the others. The hesitation my gut understood before my soul could believe it to be true. She hasn't just infiltrated my heart. She's been in my mind. You've been listening all this time? My teeth grind together as I bite down, trying to swallow my wounded pride and shattered heart. You've been using me? She doesn't look away this time. She doesn't pretend like she's anything but the villain my mates have told me she'd turn out to be. She takes a deep breath, finding her composure quicker than I want to think possible as I feel my own fake hate crumbling. How long? How long you've been able to pick through people's thoughts at your leisure? Legilimency was the proper name for it, prowling through another's thoughts. The stronger legilimens were said to even be capable of influencing those they invaded. Mina was one of the most talented wizards I'd met, and smarter still for knowing better than to flaunt it. It took longer to become an animagus. I turn away, unable to look at her any longer without my chest tightening, memories of our time in school flooding back to me. Could she really have been in my head all that time? The heat returns, rage coursing through me until I ball my fingers into fists because I can't help myself now. Try not to think of my fingers tracing up her thighs only makes the memories more prominent. The taste of her skin, the sound of my name on her lips through shallow breaths. I'm unable to think of anything but the time we've spent together, the thoughts that crossed my mind as she lay beside me, second-guessing every lingering glance I took for want, every soft touch that was only meant to draw me closer. How utterly foolish I've been, played as simply as the record meters away and equally at its end. Our numbers, our routines, our weaknesses and what we think are our strengths. What had she already given the enemy? My eyes are probably reddening now too. I can feel the tears pushing past my attempts to stifle them. I don't get it. You've had me so perfectly wrapped around about your finger. Why tell me now? Why leave now? I turn back to her, pushing my hair back and resting a hand against my forehead. Did you get what you needed and now you're done with me? Is that it? I'm done with them. A spark sets off in the dimness of her eyes, and she closes her fingers around the fabric clinging to her hip. I was wrong to ever go back. She looks down at her arm, her fingers running over the snake ink into her skin. Worse, though, to come here, to have involved you in this. What even am I in this? I hold her chin, bringing her attention back to me so she can't run from the question. Some pawn for you to move as you're told? You're a means to an end. She's trying to sound certain, but I can hear the shakiness in her tone. They trust me now. I can end this. With Dumbledore? My hand drops as I scoff. Why would he trust you? Admitting what you've been up to, showing me what you're capable of? Oh, now we're supposed to believe you want to change sides? I think Dumbledore understands that he's losing this war. The tremble in her voice has given way to an even and taut tone. Whatever remorse she displayed the moment before has been wiped away for the hollow expression. You've never been in any danger, have you? I start to pace, too many emotions boiling through me to stay in one place. With them, I mean. That night you showed up here. You were sent after me. She doesn't even speak this time, but merely nods to confirm my suspicions. Then she looks past me, like the answers are somewhere in the distance. We have a past, a connection no one would bat an eye at were it to be rekindled. Christ, I don't mean to say, but it slips out in pure shock. Listen to you, talking like this is some grand scheme you've pulled off. It doesn't matter that my instincts knew this would happen. It still doesn't want to process as real every time it registers in my mind. How could she be this ruthless? What had they put her through to convince her of such hard-hearted manipulation? I can't let your feelings stop me from... My feelings? I scoff and quit my pacing, unable to contain the fury burning in my chest, standing still yet equally unfit to believe the words passing her lips. You are a piece of work. I mean truly, truly spoiled. My head shakes back and forth to emphasize my disbelief, to act as if my feelings have meant anything to you. Her composed features falter for a moment, though she tries to hold her shoulders back through it. She opens her mouth, but no words come out. I wait to hear them in my mind and wonder if she's been in my head this whole fight. I wonder if she can make better sense of my thoughts than I can right now. Have you nothing more to say then? Not even the nerve to ask for forgiveness? I don't even know what I want her to say in response, but hearing nothing is somehow worse, because in her silence, I can't ignore the conflict in her eyes. The war that must be raging just behind her stone demeanor that starts to crumble. No. It's hardly a whisper as her reddening eyes begin to drip with tears. I don't want you to forgive me. Her voice breaks and she cups a trembling hand over her mouth. Please don't ever forgive me. And that is the end of that story. Jackie, oh my goodness.
Oof.
So dark.
Dark and tense. Eesh. Who wrote that?
Hi, Lo. So, oh my goodness. Super dry now.
Sorry, Lo. It gets worse.
Lo, if you have any questions, please feel free, and anybody else in the chat, to ask them in the chat and we'll get to them. But first off, I just have kind of an overarching kind of question. So this is part of your larger series. What made you decide to create not only like this piece itself, but this whole kind of missing moments series collection in general?
I have no chill. I've got like, I got a little obsessed with this idea, just like this not pre-canon, because we have a little bit of the Marauders, but just this idea that this story happened, and I wanted to like, the novel that it's based on is so limited in perspective, and these events happen before even that novel happens. It's kind of like a precursor. They reference it, but it's not actually in it. And so I just like, this moment especially is like pivotal, and I just had it in my head and it wasn't able to be part of the novel, and I was like, but like, I gotta know, like, what did Remus do when like he figured this out, because like he's still around, what happened with them? And so yeah, I just had to keep writing it.
I love that. No, I love it when authors do that, because it shows that they didn't just write the story then put it away forever. It's a continuation of a universe, but also because you love your characters so much and you want to know more about what happened in those bits that you didn't get to put in the novel because of the way that it was structured. So I love that. Love that answer.
Yeah.
Lo would like to know, why do you enjoy hurting her?
I don't know who hurt me, but it just compels me to write angst, I guess.
So follow up to that with Lo's question. You write angst so well. Do you ever regret hurting your characters and therefore
Oh
your
my
readers?
gosh. The readers know you chose to read it and you knew it was marked angst, okay? Um it's an interesting question though about hurting characters because I definitely am not excited about it. Maybe in a weird way I am because it's like when you think of something and you're like, "Oh, that works." Like that's exciting. But like I wish these things didn't happen this way, but this is who these people are and these are the stupid choices they made. I didn't make them for them. That's what they would do. You ever just write something and you're like, I did this a lot with this story in particular. Would write like would write a scene and like write dialogue and then be like, but they wouldn't say that. Like that's what needs to get said to move this along, but like they wouldn't say that. So then I have to go back and be like, okay, so does it go somewhere else? Or does something happen like what would have to happen to make them say that? And then that's kind of where you go from there. And just everyone hurts each other in this story. It is very sad. I'm sorry.
It is, but that's okay. I think what I loved so much about this, and myself not having read your novel yet, which I'll go do at some point here soon with the review event that's happening, is that there's a few moments throughout where you talk about, like, there's a little bit of a motif about music and like record players and time, oh my God, I did music for so many years. The meter of a
Yeah.
piece. Was there a particular reason why you chose to kind of have that as motif throughout, or was that just something that just kind of happened naturally?
I think I came up with the line about how like their relationship was at its end and this idea of just uh it was trying to come up with a way to say that he was just like he couldn't think and he was frozen and just this idea of white noise without having to say the phrase white noise. And so that then I was like, okay, well then white noise is like happening somewhere. And so then that was like the music was like playing and it
Mm-hmm.
was like a record that was just going and also just the idea of like a record that you just keep putting the record on. Just that idea of like it just keeps going. And that's Remus and Mina's relationship is it really does not matter what happens between these two. Like they always find each other again. And Remus especially like he just has this self-sabotaging nature in him. In
Yes.
this story where like his kindness, it's like his kindness hurts himself and that's like the best way to put it. But like he's so open-hearted for her and she just demolishes him every time and he's like, yeah, that's just who she is. I accept that. And I don't know, that to me is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and I understand how like destructive it is, but it's also so beautiful. So, yeah.
Well, I think the way that you've characterized Remus is also very close, very true to his canon characterization.
Yeah.
You know, he truly loved Harry and all of them, and was so happy to be in the order, and loved, like, in canon, loved Tonks even though she could step on him. So I think that's very true to his character, and it makes a lot of sense. And also, it's just maybe he just doesn't know a better relationship. He doesn't know any better, and
Yeah.
he thinks she's it. Kat has a lovely question from the chat. So Kat's interested in the line about the ones that always end happy. Is that what she thinks she could find in him? Is that her true motivation? Because her motivations are unknown in this
Yeah.
case.
They're shady at best. um there are like I play this game sometimes when I write, especially when I write Mina, where I play like genuine, not genuine, or like sincere, not sincere. Um, and they're the best lines for me are the ones where they're sincere but manipulative. And this idea of her idea of happy endings and like reading books and storytelling, which comes up a lot in the novel. There's like this Peter Pan kind of illusions that get made over and over again. Um, and I think it is like her escape of this idea of like what she can't have is a story that's just like simple and cheerful and rom-com and like just easy. But it is, I think, with Remus, like that is the closest she's ever gonna get because he just like lets her be.
Hmm.
And so if the world wasn't what it was, and if the situations weren't what they were, and if this hasn't like if this didn't happen, because this happens and like she can't ever go back from this, right? Like
Right.
she can't ever be with him again, no matter how much she may want to, which whether she does or not, I don't know. I mean, I do know. But um yeah, I think that's one of those moments where like she was being genuine, but her truth was part of what was so manipulating. I know that's horrible. I'm sorry.
No, that's a really compelling character, and I love that you can get into the headspace of the character so much like that.
Yeah,
Um,
you know,
something else
duplicitous and whatnot.
something else I want to point out about this story is that it's only 25 or 2,600 words, so it's very very brief, but I don't know, how do you write so good? How do you
Hmm.
like, you're very concise with your language, but the
Mm.
descriptive words that you use are so precise and really convey a very specific meaning. Um,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Oof. Yeah. I actually struggle to write long, like to get to what, however long this chapter was, 2,400 words even. Like, I can't. Like, it takes so much effort because I really think I write, or at least when I, especially this story's so atmospheric and so like you're writing more of like ruminating thoughts and like inner monologues instead of like action, which by the way, like I can't with the action. So like this is my niche. But um I don't know, for me that just means that the language needs to be less like it's less action oriented. It's less this happened and that happened, or like paragraphs about describing a room. Um you're just in it as it's happening. And so it just you explain, and also like I tried really hard with this because I have this bad habit. I like that's my go-to when I first write is just like I write like a line and then I write like "And she gets up and moves. And then he goes over there. And something happens here." Cuz I'm just like lazy. Um and so then it's like taking that action and breaking it into like I don't know, more of like a description or like an emotion instead of like action words, cuz I don't know, they just don't speak to me.
Show not
I like
tell.
to just I just like to ruminate, you know? And then you just wax poetically about something for a little bit. You're like, "Yeah, the moon. What all can we talk about with the moon? Let's just compare it to every aspect of life." And there's a paragraph.
Love it. Lo has another question in the chat for you. Can you write a dream or a/AU where they are happy for the readers who enjoy happiness?
I have actually sat down to try and write a Regulus Lives AU, which is not coming together well because it's still angsty AF. And I will try. I am trying. My fluff comes on the other side of angst. But I think for me I think that's what makes it like I don't know, compelling,
Mhm.
is that a story can have those like beautiful, like really fluffy, really like I don't know, just really romantic fluffy moments, but it's still complicated.
Mhm. Have the tenderness, have that brief respite from
Yeah.
the pain and war and anything awful in life, and jump right back into the awfulness. Mhm.
I mean, and in some ways that honestly like it's the worst thing and it's emotionally manipulative, but that's what makes the story so sad, right?
And
Is
that's
that they do
yeah.
have that you have those really precious moments to wreck later.
Well, and that's
Because if it
how
was
humanity is. That's how it
yeah,
is to be
if
human,
it was
so
all dark, then we wouldn't know any better. If it was
right.
all light, we wouldn't know any better. So like having those that rise and fall. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm trying low. It's hard. I'm in an angsty place.
So aside from that then, what else are you currently besides writing a million reviews for the review event,
Yeah.
what else other projects are you working on at this moment?
So I did start to sit down and write another next gen fic because I started with next gen and then I got pulled into this world of spies and lies. And I was like, I am being very angsty. Let me write something a little more fluffy. Well, it got a little angsty, but the second chapter, so it's called Friends Don't, and it's Scorp Lily, and it's the Maddie and Tay song where you're like, we're friends, but like we're more than that. Um, And so I have the first chapter up, and I'm working on the second chapter now, which is way less angsty than the first chapter, and way more of just like fun, like stupid banter
My favorite
between a
kind of
lot of different characters. But I was like, now I'm like reading, I'm like, is this the same story? Like I came out of this like really kind of angsty mood in chapter 1, and now it's just like, nah, we're just like weird friends who are bantering. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess it works. We'll get there. So yeah, I'm halfway through. I've written it, but I've only like edited it once. And anybody who knows my writing, I edit things like 50 times. So we'll see.
Well, that's exciting. I don't edit. I should, just to catch typos, and I don't.
Oof. I have to, because I see like my writing style is chaos and lazy. And I like that's the best way I can describe it, because I'll write down like a paragraph of like, here's what's gonna happen here. And then I like write it out as like I don't know, like story beats almost, right?
Mhm,
In little like sections. And then that turns into like dialogue with like tags, because I
mhm.
always have to like write like breaks even in a phrase, because that's how I hear it in my head. And then I actually go in and make it like worth reading.
So your writing style is chaotic neutral.
Absolutely, yes. It's perfect.
I love that. I don't know. Does anybody in the chat, do you guys have any more questions for Jackie about this story, about her writing in general? Honestly, it's all just great.
It's all roses. It's all roses and
All
cheerful.
roses. Everything's coming up roses for Mama. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us live, Jackie. Very much appreciated.
Roses with
Roses with
thorns.
thorns. Yep. Mhm.
That's applicable.
Pretty
That's
accurate.
it.
Yep. All right. Well, we will not be having a Fic Night next month, as March begins the nominations and voting process for this year's
Yankees.
awards. So no Fic Night, as that all of chaos will be happening. So please, if you haven't joined us over on fanfictalk.com yet, you should. It's a lot of fun. We're doing a review event right now, which is space themed. I am helping run it. It's very fun because I love sci-fi. So yeah, so we'll be back here fresh with a new Fic Night at the end of April.
Let's go.
Thank you all for joining us.